Hello, welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. Today it's a Q&A video. Thanks for all your questions and comments as always. I've been having fun on my GSX-R 750. I've now got it back from Bob. Went back to Bob to have all the new bodywork put on it, so it's now mint. So I've got a few more videos planned for the future on that. And I haven't ridden it since Cadwell, so I can't wait to ride it again because I've been on my travels. So I've had a couple of weeks off. I spent the first week on a bit of a European riding holiday. Went to down through France, down the west coast of France, stayed at Bordeaux on the way down. Calais to Bordeaux, day one. Day two, Bordeaux to Gijon on the north coast of Spain, with a little bit of the Picos sprinkled in for good measure. And then the next day we did Gijon to Burgos, which took in a load of the Picos, which is absolutely fantastic. A lot of people talk about the Picos now, and yeah, it's easy to see why. When you ride the roads, they're just superb. And we probably just scratched the surface of them as well. Then we went to Jaca, along the bottom of the Pyrenees, and then from Jaca to Andorra and Carcassonne. Took in all the, is it the N260 that goes more or less all the way from sort of Jaca to Andorra. Absolutely superb. Then we did Andorra to Cannes, or Carcassonne to Cannes. Took in some of the fantastic south of France gorges. Went up from Aix-de-Provence up to Digne-les-Bains and come down through the Route Napoleon, which is just stunning. I know that road really well from lots of MCM road tests. Then the next day we did Cannes to Troyes, and again we went up to Nice first, did all the nice gorge roads to Digne-les-Bains, Route Napoleon to Grenoble, and then up to Troyes, or Troyes as I'm told they actually say it by my French friend Fabrice. And then back to Calais. So that was 7 nights, 3,000 miles in yeah, just about a week. And I did it on my KTM 1390 Super Duke R Evo long termer, which was fantastic. It was the best bike I could have possibly imagined for the job, because on the mountain roads it handles and goes like a super bike, and grips like a super bike, and brakes like a super bike. It's really comfortable because it's really roomy. Got a little screen on it, so it's not too bad down the motorway. Yeah, fantastic. Even the built-in sat nav that's kind of works via the app on the phone was just incredible. So you can read more about that trip in MCN soon. And then I went off to Madrid for a long weekend to see Metallica play on a Friday night and a Sunday night in concert. No repeats, but it was amazing on the Sunday night. It was the night of the England v Spain European final of football, and we were in the Atletico Madrid stadium with 65,000 fans watching Metallica. And as the concert drew to a close, all the crowd, a lot of them were looking at their phones watching the match, realised that Spain had won, and the atmosphere was just electric. They were singing, 65,000 people singing Enter Sandman at the top of their voices. I mean, Metallica must have wondered what was going on. And it was brilliant, and there was no trouble, no aggravation. It was just really good-natured and amazing to be in that environment. I'd love to go and watch a Spanish motorcycle race, actually, MotoGP or World Superbike. Excuse me, that would be absolutely amazing. But let's crack on with some questions, shall we? So the first one is from Squeezerker. Hi, Nevesy. Awesome content as usual. Please keep them coming. Thank you. What's your take on super nakeds on track? I was under the impression they might put more emphasis on having fun rather than chasing tenths. All in a more comfortable fashion. Seriously looking at that 1390 Super Duke R for track shenanigans. That's a really interesting question. Thank you for that. Super nakeds on track. Well, for the road, Super Nakeds are by far my favourite kind of bike. They're kind of aimed at sports riders like me who've been riding sports bikes all their lives. They don't want to roll around now on a race replica. By the way, just going back to my Spain trip, talking of race reps versus super nakeds, a good friend of mine, Rod Taylor, who came with us on the trip, did the whole thing on a GSX-R 1000R 2017 bike. 7 nights, 3,000 miles. It must have been, I had to go on the bike for probably about 20 miles and that was enough for me. Just, I can't imagine how I used to do touring all the time on super bikes. Just the wrist ache, the neck ache. I'm too old. I'm too old for a race rep, which is why super nakeds are just brilliant for the road, because you've got your performance, almost undiluted performance compared to a super bike. And you've got kind of a bike that's quite spacious, and some super nakeds have got screens and a bit of protection as well. But really, when we say super nakeds, we talk about super bikes with straight bars and upright riding positions, kind of regardless of the amount of bodywork they've got. People get hung up on the exact description, but that's basically what it is in essence. Around the track, we've done loads of super nakeds tests on track, and they are fast, but even the best ones, like I've ridden at Imola last year, the Street Fighter SP2, V4 SP2 with slicks on, as kind of factory as it gets when it comes to super nakeds, and they're a little bit harder to ride than a super bike, you know, especially the physicality of trying to hold on to the thing. You know, as soon as you get well into 3 figures, the wind's trying to peel you off the back of the bike, so it's hard work actually staying on it. You get real bad neck ache and shoulder ache if you spend a whole day riding a super naked around the track. It absolutely rinses you, some of us. And the handling isn't quite there compared to a super bike, just by virtue of the fact you're sat away from the front wheel. You know, super nakeds have got relatively canted forward riding positions, but they don't get you right over the front. So you haven't really got the confidence to absolutely rail into the corner like a sports bike. And the other thing is, despite the power they've got, and they've all got really big power, a lot of that is mitigated by the fact that they're not very aerodynamic. So if you come onto a straight following a super bike on a super naked, the super bike's going to pull away just because it can slice through the air easier. So, you know, super nakeds are really good fun on track, but I think, you know, they probably make more sense on the road. It's kind of an irony. Super nakeds on the track have got all that performance, but you can't really use it to the full because of the riding position, really. But for the road, super nakeds are absolutely amazing. But that is a great question, and if you're seriously considering a 1390 Super Duke R for track shenanigans, yeah, absolutely. I've taken mine on track a number of times and it's been good fun, but as a road bike it is phenomenal. I really, really love it. But great question. Next is from Night Rider 1157. Here's a great question, saves you saying it. I think I might have put this or similar in before. You attend a fair number of launches, which must be a lot different to when you started as a journalist, with the addition of the YouTube generation. Some are, looking at their footage, very slow. However, at the other end of the scale, there must be vloggers that have impressed you. Care to name a few? Nice to see you've caught up with some of your dream bikes, with one of your dream bikes in the GSX-R. It's a great feeling when you open the garage and it's there in front of you. Recently fulfilled a near 50-year ambition to own a certain superbike from the 70s. All the best with yours. Oh, well, great question. You'd have to let me know what superbike it is from the 70s you bought. Yeah, and it's great opening the door to my GSX-R 750. I feel very lucky that I've got that bike. It's amazing. In terms of kind of YouTubers and influencers on launches, obviously that's becoming more and more prevalent now. But to be honest, the manufacturers kind of split YouTubers and influencers up from the rest of the journalists in general. So we don't really get to see how each other rides. I suppose the only one I've really seen ride is Lamb Chops, who's a really good rider. So yeah, so he's really good. But in terms of everybody else, I can't really say. But what I would say is, your kind of speed is kind of irrelevant when it comes to testing bikes. I think your your honesty when you're riding a bike and your experience is very important. So I think as long as you kind of somehow convey to your viewer or reader where you are in your kind of riding journey so other people can relate to you, I think that's fine. I think the problems arise if, and you probably do it more in print back in the day than video now, is when you make yourself out to be a lot more experienced or a better rider than you actually are, and you're kind of, you know, living a lie a little bit, and that doesn't really help what you're trying to do, which is inform the reader or the viewer of what your impression of the bike is. I was listening to a very good podcast by Teapot One, a Missenden Flyer, and they were saying about, you know, the thing about them is that, you know, they just give a personal opinion. But I think all journalism is like that. When it comes to reviewing, you can only give your own opinion about a motorcycle. But what you can do as a professional journalist is draw from all your experience of riding thousands of motorcycles and be able to place where the bike you're riding is in the whole scheme of things, and also have that knowledge about what a really great bike feels like, because we've been lucky enough to ride the best bikes in the world. And you can see how bikes have been watered down or not. You know, one of the reasons I bought my GSX-R 750 is because it's kind of, it's a bar that, you know, Suzuki set in the 2000s, and really it's a bar to which all bikes should be judged, really. And when you see the latest generation of middleweight sports bikes, they're built to a price, pure and simple. And then you see Panigales of the world, which are ridiculously expensive, which really don't give you any more pleasure than the GSX-R 750. So it's a really good level to keep going back to. And if you'd never experienced that level, then yeah, you might think a GSX-8R is brilliant. And in isolation it is, but you know where it actually fits in the whole scheme of things. So the only time I've been with influencers en masse or at American cruiser launches, where there's a lot of vloggers, and a lot of their riding is very worrying simply because they put more emphasis on their filming than actual riding. So we'll be riding in a group and there'll be people riding one-handed with a camera, you know, pointing it around as they ride. I mean, what that footage must look like, I don't know. It can't look very good. But you don't want to ride anywhere near these people because they're riding one-handed, or, you know, they're just not concentrating. So that's the only time when, you know, that side of things worries me. But in terms of who's fast, who's slow, it doesn't worry me at all, because I'm definitely not the fastest rider in the world. You know, there's lots of people out there in journo world and definitely racing world that can absolutely kick my ass. And there's lots of riders I can do the same too, but it doesn't matter as long as the viewer or the reader can relate to who you are and they can decide whether to value your opinion or not. And if they don't, then they can move on to the next person or the next person. So, but that's a really good question. And on the similar subject is the next question, which is from Fun with AJ. Uneasy question. You've mentioned in a couple of videos now that during some test rides, manufacturers fly both reviewers and YouTubers out for new bike launches. My question is there any animosity between the traditional written reviewers versus YouTuber social media types of reporters? Or rather the reporters who come from more established outlets versus independent ones? Or is it all generally friendly? Full disclosure, I'm an up-and-coming motorcycle content creator, so I'm asking this as I'm wondering if there's a hurdle I'll have to deal with someday. Thanks for the videos, AJ. That's an interesting question, AJ. Yeah, there's more and more, like I said before, influencers and YouTubers and stuff come on launches, and from my side there's zero animosity there, you know, even between the freelance journalists and the other magazines or the YouTube channels or whatever. We're kind of, you know, when you're there riding the bikes, you're all in it together. I don't think there's any animosity or anything like that. To be honest, I find it fascinating. I ask a zillion and one questions to, you know, the YouTubers and the influencers because it's really interesting, and I enjoy their content as much as I do kind of traditional journalism. it's quite refreshing in some ways. Although, and I think there's a place for both. There's a place for what I do with my day job, working for MCN as a road tester. You know, it's kind of ultra professional, fact checked. You know, you can draw from lots of experience that you've had. You've got the resources to do quite a deep and thorough job. But then equally, I'll watch a review where somebody goes along to a dealership, takes a bike from a dealership and goes for a ride, because at the end of the day, like I said, it's all just an opinion. My opinion is no more valid than somebody who's just jumped on a bike from a dealer. It's how the bike makes you feel. And like I said, the only difference really is the amount of experience you've got to draw on, and whether the reader or the viewer decides to take your opinion on board. But there's no animosity at all. I listen to, like I said, Teapot One I really enjoy. I like the Missenden Flyer. I like Lamb Chops rides. You know, maybe 44 Teeth is that kind of middle ground between YouTuber and journalism. I love their stuff. So yeah, more motorcycle content the better really. So yeah, no animosity, no fights, unfortunately. We just all get on with it. And because the common love is motorcycles, and I think generally in the bike world, most people are decent, nice people. No, there's not too much dirty laundry out there. I mean, there's a bit, not a lot. But thanks for your question. Next one is from Rage Rider 6283. Thanks for your question. Great vid and interesting as ever. Must be a comment on one of the older ones. Out of interest, what do the Europeans do differently to the Japanese when setting up their respective ABS systems? Is it hardware, software, or both? Well, that's a great question, and one that keeps cropping up. Yeah, the ABS on Japanese bikes versus European bikes, the way the braking systems work are very, very different. So, for example, if you take super bikes as the extreme example, you get on a Ducati or BMW S1000RR, and you brake for your life, you get loads of feel through the lever, you get ultra powerful stopping power, and just really tactile, beautiful to use brakes. And you'd never know they've got ABS until, you know, you'd need them in an emergency or whatever. But then you take an R1, a GSX-R1000, a ZX-10, a Fireblade, although they've got a little bit better in recent times. The braking systems are really dead. So you've got really wooden feel at the lever. You get the feeling that the harder you brake, you're not getting a corresponding braking force from the calipers. They often fade as well. So the simple answer is, I don't know why that is, but I've spoken to test riders at launches in the past before, sort of off the record, and they say that the same software and the same hardware is available to everyone. And that's true. If you look at a Fireblade, it's got Brembo stylemers, it's got Brembo master cylinders. I can't remember if it's got braided lines or not, which will be the same as a Panigale or a BMW. But the difference is the way the manufacturers decide to set the ABS systems up. So all of these systems are brake-by-wire. So you're pulling on the lever, and then you've got hoses that go to an ABS pump, and the ABS pump decides how much pressure to put into the brake pads, the calipers, based on the amount of grip the tyres have got, how much rear wheel lift they've got, you know, if they're going to lock, the change of the wheel speeds. And ABS reads wheel speeds, front and rear. It reads IMU readings, so the bikes know if they're going to window, the bikes know if they're going to lock up. With Japanese bikes, I would say that they're set conservatively, more for safety than performance. So generally, well, that's starting to change a little bit. You can't turn the rear ABS off to do skids like you can on a KTM or a Ducati. You can't endo a Japanese bike generally. So if you try and endo a Japanese bike, the front brakes let off when it feels like the rear's in the air. Whereas the European bikes build their ABS systems more for performance. They have proper track modes. And I think even when I was racing an HP4 in 2014, it was in the era where in IDM, the German Superbike Championship, BMW was racing with ABS with their HP4. We did a test at MCN where we tested a Honda when they were using linked ABS on their race bikes. Well, obviously very different to the road versions, because that ABS was fantastic. So, I mean, ABS hasn't really got a lot of benefit in racing. I think they're more of a marketing ploy. But, you know, the reason they feel different, I think, is just the way the manufacturers decide to set their bikes up. It's nothing to do with the actual software or the hardware they use. And it's the same all the way through. You know, Japanese bikes generally got wooden brakes and the European bikes haven't, which is such a shame, because, you know, braking's a big part of your riding. It's something you do a lot. And if it feels dead, it definitely takes away some of the riding experience. And the only way to get around that really is to junk the ABS. You know, you can take the fuse out of ABS, and sometimes that kind of helps a little bit. You can change, say for example, my H2 SX long termer I had last year, you can change the pads, but because the mushiness comes from the ABS, changing the pads doesn't make any difference. Sometimes it does a little bit, but generally, unless you get rid of the ABS, you're not going to have really nice strong brakes on a Japanese bike, and you're not going to do that, are you? So it's just a little bit of a shame that they're designed that way. But great question, thank you very much. And finally, a question from Chris Goes 9610. Thanks very much for your question. I noticed that you have the new Alpinestars helmet on your shelf. What's your verdict? I've broken both my collarbones recently and wondered what your general thoughts were, but in particular the ability to save your already novel collarbones. Well, a lot of people ask about this crash helmet. I haven't actually reviewed it in MCN because I want to give it a good, good amount of time to be testing it. But and I've had it about a year now. But my general thoughts are it's really, really good. I mean, the best things about it is that it's very light, very aerodynamic, so it slices through the wind very quietly. The visor's got a really nice big wide field of vision, and the ventilation's really good. And this is kind of a first edition snazzy carbon fibre jobby with like a lacquered red tint to the carbon. So it's great. And then talking about collarbones, I mean, I don't know if you mean, saving your collarbones with a crash helmet, but this has got cutouts here to be soft, to protect your collarbones in a crash. But really a crash helmet isn't going to protect your collarbones, really. Airbags are the answer. Airbags are, whether it's an airbag in a leather suit, standalone airbag that goes over the top of your jacket or in your jacket or whatever, I mean, they are designed to protect your collarbone. So, I'd heartily recommend wearing one of those. Most airbags protect the top half of your body. And I think in MotoGP, since airbags came into force probably early 2000s with Day and Easy and Alpinestars, broken collarbones, injuries have gone right down. So they definitely do something, because it's one of the most common motorcycle injuries. When you fall from a height, collarbones are quite fragile, aren't they? So yeah, so that crash helmet is good at protecting collarbones in a crash when your head bangs into it, and an airbag will really help you as well. So that's it for another Q&A. Thanks very much for watching. There's going to be a video next week about a rather nice race bike I discovered. That's is being built as we speak. I'm just looking at it at the moment. Hopefully I get a chance to ride it at some point. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.